It's a new day on Deep Space Nine, and O'Brien's arguing with Bashir about the Alamo. Worf settles it by saying the facts are entirely irrelevant. You either believe a legend, or the whole thing doesn't matter enough to care. And speaking of legends, the original Lord Baltar from Battlestar Galactica is back. Kor's here to pay his respects about Jadzia, then we move on to the real reason for his visit. In short, he's pissed off so many people during his long life that nobody wants him around, despite being a warrior of note during an ongoing war. Worf's one of the few people who'll still give him the time of day, which is why Kor wants his help getting back into the fight, so he can die with a weapon in his hand instead of a bottle. Slight problem, Martok, husband of Sorella, hates the bastard's guts. He refuses to even discuss the idea of giving him a command and orders Worf to leave. Perhaps that's because his mind is on the hit-and-run raid he plans to lead into Cardigan territory, so Worf has another go at raising the topic a while later. Mentioning Kor's name again causes Martok, husband of Sorella, to throw everybody else off the bridge. Maybe it's because he knows Worf won't give up until he has a reason, so Martok, husband of Sorella, gives him one. As a young man, he worked hard to try and enlist in officer training for the Klingon military, and despite finding a sponsor and successfully applying, his entry was denied by Kor. The House of Martok, House of Husband of Sorella, is not of noble blood like Kor, and he objected to the idea of a peasant leading. The rejection also buggered his chances of joining as a basic soldier, so it's handy the ship he was labouring on some years later, one commanded by a general, got attacked by Romulans, and he was given a battlefield commission for kicking the shit out of them. Understandable, then, that Kor's not a welcome name, which is a shame when Worf already went and made him an officer. Martok, husband of Sorella, doesn't countermand this, but does make it clear Kor is Worf's problem if it all goes pear-shaped. Worf catches up to Kor as he's reminiscing with the new version of Dax, who promptly buggers off when she sees Worf wants to talk to him. Kor's disappointed to not be given his own ship, and more so that he'll be a lowly third officer on the Chitang, but it gets him in the fight. With a reassurance that there'll be no trouble and he'll stay out of the way of Martok, husband of Sorella, he thanks Worf. Then he asks what the name of the ship is again, as he's already forgotten. Staying out of the way is not what happens when Kor reports for duty on the bridge. Even if Kor had planned to make things low-key, the rest of the crew don't give him the chance. A bit of shouting from Martok, husband of Sorella, gets them back to work, but they're all still distracted by having a legend with them. We're nearly 20 minutes in, and we don't have a B-plot yet, so let's fart one of those out. Kira's asking Dax about what it's like to meet Kor for the third time in as many hosts, as she starts talking about strong memories of them being together and having the weird desire of wanting to be there with him, Quark's listening in. Perhaps those ears of his aren't working properly today, as he's now of the opinion she was talking about Worf, and plans to rekindle their relationship. Back to the Chitang we go, presumably because the Rataran is still being repaired after the silly bastards flew it into a star. Martok, husband of Sorella, is boasting to the crew in the mess hall, like what proper Klingons do, when Kor arrives. The crowd soon moves over to him, and he begins telling his tales, which may or may not have a passing resemblance to what actually happened. It's not exactly keeping out of his way, so it's understandable that Martok, husband of Sorella, is proper pissed off about it. He'll have to be upset later as we're approaching our targets and need to prepare. Kor in particular needs a bit longer, as he's entirely forgotten what the hell he's supposed to be doing. Asking someone else what they're doing jogs his memory enough, though causes a touch of suspicion in the process. The attack begins with a couple of ships kabooming some stuff on a planet and then legging it. They've not turned sneaky bastard mode back on afterwards, but this is intentional as they're a decoy. Well, the one that survives is anyway. That gives the other 3 ships a chance to wait until the defenders have buggered off before they appear and start kabooming stuff themselves. The target's not entirely undefended though, and we get some kabooms of our own. Worf and Martok, husband of Sorella, get knocked down, so Kor takes command and tells us to swing around for another go. Martok, husband of Sorella, is sufficiently conscious to countermand this, but nobody hears him. It goes poorly and the ships take a kicking. Kor doesn't care, but that's hardly surprising when he thinks it's 100 years ago and he's attacking the Federation with his old mate Kang. Ordering a boarding party and declaring complete victory is enough for Martok, husband of Sorella, to try and toss a knife into Kor, but Worf manages to catch it and knock Kor on his arse instead, before ordering us to get the bloody hell out of here. Once we're away, Kor is ordered off the bridge, with a facial expression that suggests he knows he's just massively bollocksed everything up. It's B-plot time again, but we started it late, so we have to wrap things up quickly. In this case, it's a speech from Quark to Dax about how trying to start a relationship with Worf would be a terrible mistake and she's a different person, all of which Dax agrees with and tells him she never intended to. She also thanks him and calls his intentions sweet, so now he thinks she fancies him instead. We'll leave him to fantasize and go back to the Chitang. Kor's on his own in the mess hall when Martok, husband of Sorella, arrives with some others. He's not going to pass up the chance to piss on Kor after so many years of bad blood, so starts mocking him over his brain fart up on the bridge. The others join in until Kor leaves, with a warning about never growing old. Not that the experience was all Martok, husband of Sorella, had hoped it would be. Wanting to see Kor brought low for decades isn't quite the same thing as actually experiencing it, and he agrees with Worf about trying to find him a position back home. That's if we get home. We're being followed, which is something that really shouldn't be happening with sneaky bastard mode turned on, but the Jem'Hadar seem to have developed a way of doing so. At their current speed, they're going to catch us before we can reach our rendezvous with the Defiant and some mates, an event likely to end badly for us. Worf thinks one ship could delay the Jem'Hadar by doing a science to stop them briefly, then having a bit of a Barney to keep them busy. The distraction ship would get mega fucked as a result, of course, which is why Worf offers to captain it with a handful of volunteers. Not everybody's in agreement with this idea, most notably the assistant to Martok, husband of Sorella. He's an old man too, and avoided mocking Kor when the others did. That's who he's visiting now, in fact, to tell about the plan, and he's not convinced Worf can keep 10 enemy ships busy for long enough. Somebody with more experience might be able to, though. Worf's in a corridor on his way to take command of another ship when Kor finds him. He wishes Worf luck, then waits until his back's turned before drugging him, saying he'll give Worf's regards to Jadzia when he sees her. Up on the bridge, Martok, husband of Sorella, is getting updates on our distraction ship. The plan's working and our pursuers have been stopped, but the more difficult job of keeping them busy still remains. Worf arriving on the bridge to wait with them is a bit of a surprise, but Martok, husband of Sorella, doesn't take long figuring out who took his place. Worf has no doubt Kor will succeed. He's a legend, and legends exist to be believed. The lack of pursuing ships a while later suggests he's right. Quite how we know they're not pursuing when we said we were out of sensor range a moment ago, I'm not sure, but let's ignore that for now. Martok, husband of Sorella, is the one to lead the toast to his erstwhile enemy, so we'll leave the crew to literally sing Kor's praises until the next adventure. Near the start of this episode, when Worf says belief is the only thing that matters where legends are concerned, I had a sudden epiphany. I realized that Klingons are orcs. For those who don't know, orcs with a K are a species, or collection of species, forming a faction in the fictional setting of Warhammer 40,000, a universe filled with a whole lot of complete bastards who fight each other constantly. 40k's whole thing is that there are no good guys, which I think is a bit unfair to the orcs, as they're just doing what they were made to do and having a laugh in the process. There's no malice in their aggression, only the sure and certain belief that the other side is having just as much fun getting blown up as they are. Anywho, one of the defining features of orcs is that they can unconsciously shape reality with belief. What does that mean? Well, let's look at colours. They believe that things painted red go faster, or anything blue is lucky. It extends beyond that to their tech. If one of their mech boys hands over a box full of bolts with a pipe at one end and says it's a gun, then any orc pulling the trigger is going to see bullets come out of it.
Mech boys is there to give you weapons. If he says it's a shooter, it must be a shooter. That's why he's a mech boy. Stands to reason, doesn't it?
Our episode today ends with just such logic.
The whole master's in there to win. If he says he'll do it, then he'll do it. That's why he's the whole master. Stands to reason, doesn't it?
Now, I'm not suggesting that the combined latent psychic power of Klingons is what's driving core, just like it does for orcs. I'm simply saying that the all-or-nothing attitude of belief is one shared by them. Legends are true because you believe in them. Or, to use another 40k maxim, blessed is the mind too small for doubt. In truth, I'm not sure there's much more to say about the story itself. An arrogant and pompous arsehole is brought low by time, the enemy that always wins. He gets redemption not by reflecting on his actions, but by carking it gloriously, which is arguably the more Klingon approach anyway, so everybody's fine with it. As to the B-plot, well, the writers didn't waste time on it, so neither will we. Let's instead go back to the topic we started on. The Klingon mindset is that if you believe in a legend, then you give a full-throated embracing of it as the objective truth. And that has some potential implications for comments from Core this episode. Kahless was the most capable warrior who ever lived, and as such, obviously the best Klingon. Whether facts support that conclusion is irrelevant. Klingons believe it, and thus it is true. The teachings of Kahless set the foundation for a stable society focused on honor and strength, one that's been mostly solid for thousands of years as a result. Whether he actually did say or write any of those rules is irrelevant. Klingons believe it, and thus it is true. Core states that some bloodlines are directly descended from Kahless himself. Whether those family histories can be accurately traced back a couple of thousand years is irrelevant. He believes it, and thus it is true for him. And all of those things make sense from a Klingon perspective. History is written by the victors, and victory is what drives their whole ethos. Why shouldn't the truth be whatever the strongest Klingons say it is? They're clearly the best. So, as far as Core's concerned, refusing Martok, husband of Sorella, an opportunity to train as an officer isn't discrimination. It's the right and proper observance of the objective truth from his perspective. Bloodlines not descended from the first Imperial Court don't share the prowess of the greatest ever Klingon. Why should they give orders to those who do? We see it differently, of course. To us, it's just another variant of religious bigotry, beliefs being cherry-picked at best or outright twisted at worst. To be fair, Worf considers it a bullshit reason as well, but how much of that is because we humans have taught him his own objective truth? The whole thing is messy and nuanced, once again raising the question of whether we have any right to judge another society based on our own ethics. We can rant and rail on about how our way is obviously better and they should switch, but perhaps that's a finger the Federation would be better off not pointing. Only one episode ago we were shown how the Ferengi way of doing things can be more efficient than Starfleet. I doubt O'Brien recommended that we should immediately switch to a barter and trade system as a primary means of part distribution as a result. Eggnog's way is not O'Brien's way, and we wouldn't expect the same success rate. That, perhaps, is one of the most regularly forgotten things when watching Star Trek, including by myself on occasion. Alien isn't just a label, it's a descriptor. There are cultures with outlooks utterly different to ours, and to assume superiority is an error. Something being wrong for you does not necessarily prove it's wrong for everybody else as well. End of episode.
Advertising it is then. I can't wait to see what else site we get dumped at for this one.
Ironically, that might be the best option.
How'd you work that one out?
Well, advertisers of the 20th and 21st centuries tended to be mealy-mouthed cowards, unwilling to be associated with anything that could be deemed political. The resulting grey paste of inoffensive content might be our best chance at avoiding out-and-out scumbags.
Christ, you don't exactly make it sound appealing.
I doubt it will be. It'll be a case of least worst, rather than good. Such a place would be designed to reward only those who contribute the most lukewarm content, or those who manage to repackage really shitty ideas with an advertiser-friendly mask.
Well, we've stopped. I suppose we best go take a look. Oh, bollocks.